listening to the best of the Martha Zoller Show. To hear the full show each day, tune in to AM 550 and FM 102.9 WDUN or log in to accesswdun.com and click the Listen Live button from 9 to 11 Monday through Friday. Greg Bluestein's here with me right now. He is a University of Georgia graduate. He's also a reporter for Atlanta Journal-Constitution. You see him all over television, but he's also in New Orleans, so we wanted to talk to him this morning. Greg, how are you?
I'm hanging in there. It's been a surreal experience here in the Big Easy. Nothing hasn't been anything but easy. It definitely has not been easy, I should say, here in New Orleans. But, yeah, we're hanging in here.
So what do we know so far about the ties that this terrorist had with Georgia? Because he had a lot of them.
Yeah, well, he graduated from Georgia State University. He has family who lives in Georgia. We're now deeper into the investigation of him and his background. So we have reporters fanned out all throughout the state to try to kind of dig into exactly how long he spent in Georgia. We know he was interviewed by a local student publication way back in 2015 at Georgia State, the Georgia State University Signal. So it doesn't seem like just a passing tie to Georgia.
Well, and it's interesting, too, because obviously there's always a lot of misinformation initially in reports. I remember Pew Research Center reported that first reports on things like this have about 40% of the information turns out to be inaccurate. And I don't think that's untrue in this case. I mean, obviously, initially they said he was an illegal immigrant. Now we know that he was a natural-born United States citizen that also served in the military. And I hate that every news report I've heard, the first thing they say about him is he's a former member of the military. I hate that. I know it's true, but I hate that. This truck is interesting too, Greg, because it was seen come across the border. We don't know if it changed hands a few times. There's a lot of information we don't know, right?
There is a lot we don't know. And the audio clip you just played earlier of the U.S. Senator, I think was that Senator Kennedy?
Yes.
He said the same thing. He said, basically, calm down. He's giving the FBI and other federal authorities time to do their jobs because it's what they do, right? And there's a lot they know that they're not telling us, of course, too.
And we don't want to know. I don't want to know everything,
yeah.
Greg.
Yeah, and it will come out in due time in court papers and in interviews and all that. We will know a lot more about this in 2 months than we do right now. Some of the stuff we don't want to know for good reason because we have to let the federal investigators do their work. And, we don't want to tip off. They don't want to tip off certain people who could be suspects or involved in some way or witnesses know that they know what they know. If that makes any sense. So there's a lot we don't know.
Well, and there was also a explosion that happened in front of the Trump Hotel in Las Vegas on New Year's Day also with using a Tesla truck, I think it was. It's one of those weird looking Teslas that I don't know what it is. And what the reports are is that both of these vehicles, this truck as well as this one that blew up in front of the Trump Hotel, were rented in the same way. There's some kind of place you can rent vehicles like this that are kind of dark. I don't know anything about the dark web. You probably know more about it than I do, but it's supposedly in the dark web. So the bigger issue, and not bigger issue, but the issue is we did have one University of Georgia student that was injured. I'm amazed it wasn't more than that because there's a lot of University of Georgia people down there. Mm-hmm. There have been, I think it's up to 15 dead in this particular situation. So, the game was rescheduled, which I think was, even though I don't like the terrorists to win, if they didn't feel like they could secure the place, I understand why they did it. They're going to have the game today. Are there any changes as far as fans going to the game or anything like that, other than maybe fans that couldn't stay?
Yeah, you're right. The injured UGA student's name is Elle Ezel, and she's from Fort Myers, Florida. And as far as we've heard, she's in critical condition, but she's getting great care here in New Orleans. And in terms of the game, I mean, we're expecting the heaviest security that at least I've ever seen going to football games for decades here. There's a lot of people who have to make tough decisions, Martha. They beyond, staying an extra night and the expenses that incurs, do they go to a game where there is still an active investigation going on? And federal authorities have said there's more than one person involved. And they've been combing the French Quarter, and they found unexploded IEDs, and they found these things they're trying to defuse. And so there's real concerns from some of these fans I've been talking to here about whether or not to go to this game, beyond the cost. Should they risk it? And most are, many are, but I've talked to many who have also gone home saying, I'll just watch it from the comfort of my couch.
Well, what's kind of interesting too is that New Orleans is one of those cities that is a destination city. I mean, not unlike Atlanta. Atlanta can have multiple events that are happening back to back to back. Also, I mean, we're going to see that coming up as we lead up to the FIFA event in 2026. We always have some big event going on here. But in New Orleans, in this 2-month period that we've got starting, a little bit ago, I mean, you've got the Sugar Bowl, you've got the Super Bowl, you've got the first parade for Mardi Gras, I think is this Sunday. Granted, that doesn't have the big crowds with it that it will lead up to by the time Mardi Gras happens the 1st of March. But New Orleans has got one huge tourist event after another happening for the next 2 months.
Yeah, it's a huge test for a city that consistently punches above its weight, right? It is not nearly as big as New York's, Chicago's, LA's, not even close to the size of Atlanta, but yet it has these giant events. You mentioned Mardi Gras, the Super Bowl in a couple of weeks, right? An event like this, the Sugar Bowl, which is hosted for decades. So this is a test for New Orleans as well, and that's why we heard from the governor who went to downtown New Orleans last night to show that he was supportive of the game. I think it was Senator Cassidy or Kennedy, I can't remember which one, who said that he wasn't planning to go to the game, but now he is.
Cassidy,
Cassidy said
yep.
that. That he just wanted to show his support for the community. So there's going to be a lot of people like that because, look, this is New Orleans' reputation is on the line. It's a big blow that they had to postpone the game in the first place, right? And they made the right decision. There's a lot that we still don't know, and so I have no issue with the decision they made personally. But it's a big test for New Orleans.
Is it true that there were these barriers that could have been instituted going on to Canal Street that they had down and they just had a car there? Because I've read that, but is that true?
Yeah, we've heard different things here. The police chief said there was also vehicles that were blocking certain roadways. We know that those ramparts, I guess, those bollards is what they're called, are kind of being overhauled before the Super Bowl. So there are some under construction. There's also been reports that they were up, closer to midnight when there was even more people in there, and they might have been in transition.
3:15 in the morning, even for New Orleans, is a little bit late. I mean, but it just happened to have a lot of people. That's right.
Exactly. And of course, you don't even want to think about what could have happened if it was closer to midnight, as tragic as what we saw happen. But yeah, there's a lot of questioning of law enforcement policies right now, and what we did hear from Louisiana officials is whatever it is, they're going to fix it and make sure that never happens again.
Well, and what I was very impressed with is that the governor is a Democrat and the Attorney General is a Republican, and I saw them with pretty consistent messages. They haven't appeared together anywhere, but that usually doesn't happen anyway. But when I've seen them on interviews, you can tell that there's some coordination on the messaging, okay? And I think that that's positive because you don't want it to look like it's a partisan battle. You want to look like you're unified if you're representing the state of Louisiana.
Oh, yeah. And we've seen that from law enforcement. We've seen that from, local officials. We have seen that same messaging. But I'm almost certain Governor Jeff Landry is a Republican here.
Oh, is he a Republican? Okay, well then, for some reason, I thought he was a Democrat, but that's okay. Well, that's good. But anyway, it's good that the message is unified, regardless of the partisanship of it. And Louisiana is one of those states that kind of goes back and forth, so we'll see what happens there. What are you looking for today? What are your big things you're working on today?
Well, that's the big question, right? We have a team back in Atlanta who is looking deeper into, the suspect, the gunman,
because you were going to be off, right? You were going to be more or less off going to the game last night.
I was driving home.
Yeah,
I was going to be driving home. So the team's going to be on the hard news thing, but I'm looking at the angle of fans here, who had to make those tough decisions. I've talked to a number of them, as I said, who said, you know what, it's just not worth it. And many, many, many more who stayed and said, we're going to go to the game, and it's going to mean more now going to the game.
Have you heard whether hotels...
The terrorists haven't won.
Have you heard whether hotels are working with people? I mean, I know that's a mundane issue, but, I mean, New Orleans is a city that's pretty busy all the time.
Yeah, mine did. I can tell you that. I mean, mine was pretty simple. Luckily it's a Thursday night instead of a Saturday or Friday night.
Yeah.
It's not like extending on New Year's Eve or something like that. Most people were already up for New Year's Eve and already had that booked. But I did see long lines at many, many hotels on the front desks, including the Sheraton, which is one of the main ones in the middle of everything. And there's a line like almost to the lobby, through the lobby yesterday, as many, many fans and media members there were extending their stays.
So where were you when you first heard about this, and then what did you do first?
Yeah, I mean, I was supposed to be here for New Year's Eve, and we were in Florida around 38 area, and my wife said, let's just stay one more night here with some friends and drive up early New Year's Day. And so I woke up to a message, to a bunch of texts, because I hadn't really told my friends, to a bunch of texts saying, you okay, you okay? One of them, my brother's in law enforcement, he'd sent one of those, and I looked, and I go, oh, God, what this can't be good. And I looked at New York Times or one of the websites and immediately saw it. And then, of course, to pace in my family, I said, we got to get there earlier now than before, because that's what my job is, right, is going to those places.
Same thing for us. We woke up yesterday morning, and I saw the report, I guess, about 6:30 when I got up, and my son and daughter-in-law have a place in New Orleans, and they were spending New Year's with another family in New Orleans. Now, they have 6 kids between them, so I knew they weren't out that late. I mean, but they had gone out fairly late to that Walgreens that's right there on Canal Street, because it's a 24-hour Walgreens, and when you've got small children, someone's always sick. And so they had gone out there, and they were there up and it was 10 or 11 o'clock, so it wasn't 3 a.m, but they had gone there to they were getting super glue, because one of my grandsons had busted his head open, and so my husband was directing them on how to use super glue to close up a suture in his head. That's the one good thing about having a grandfather that's a doctor. You can do doctoring over the phone. You can do telemedicine with your grandpa. Anyway,
that's great. Wow.
But they were like, why are you asking? Because I immediately said, are you okay? Are you okay? And we got on the phone, and they hadn't even heard about it yet. And because they had gotten back around 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, something like that. But that was the first thing I thought of, is that they, we always, when we go there, my daughter-in-law's family is from New Orleans, and they are big into Mardi Gras. They're in the Comus crew, all that kind of stuff. So they go every year for that kind of stuff. And, it's just, it's the first thing you think about if you know somebody that's there. I've also reached out to President Moorhead and exchanged some messages with him related to that. But, I'm just going to say, I hope the Dawgs win today, and I hope everybody's safe.
Amen, Martha. And, it's going to be a surreal atmosphere. And I know a lot of people who are going to be cheering on the Dawgs at the Superdome will have some mixed feelings, too, not about the team, but just about being there in this moment of joy and revelry at the same time that an entire community and really the nation is mourning. Absolutely. Greg Bluestein, thank you so much for being with us this morning, and be safe. Thank you. You too, Martha. Putting the talk in news talk. It's the Martha Zoller Show on AM 550 and FM 102.9 WDUN.
Well, I'll tell you, the most egregious thing about this bill is you've got at least $110 billion, perhaps up to $125 billion, that is not paid for, that is unpaid for. That's more borrowing to our national debt. And that's just not what the country told the president and told Congress when they gave the president a mandate. Every swing state he took the popular vote, and the entire focus of the country was control spending in Washington, D.C., and this bill does the exact opposite to that. This is not following the theory of government efficiency. It is the Martha Zoller Show. Joni Alpert's here with me this morning, and we're talking to the man you just heard, Congressman Andrew Clyde. Andrew, how are you?
Good morning, Martha. I'm doing fine, thank you.
I hope you had a great Christmas, and you're going to have a happy New Year. Go Dawgs! So hopefully we'll be in good shape there. I did, and absolutely, Jennifer and I had a great Christmas, and I hope you did.
and the folks of the Ninth as well.
Well, I always think that she is your better half. That is no doubt about it. She is fantastic. So anyway, listen, we obviously just went through this budget battle, and we got a budget that was passed that's going to go through about the end of March, which will be about halfway through the first 100 days of the Trump administration. And then on the horizon also, we've got this speaker vote, which I'm going to let you talk about that first before I tell you what I think. But give us just an overview of where we are right now and what to expect in the next 10 days or so.
Well, actually, what we have is a continuing resolution. I wish it really was a budget.
Yeah, me too.
We passed our appropriations, and but we don't actually have a budget for FY25 yet. It needs to pass the House. That is what is going to happen in the first about 30 days of the new administration, the 119th Congress. The Appropriations Committee, and I'm on that committee, will have to get together and take the appropriations that we did for FY25 last year and bring those back, renew those, and pass them again in committee, send them to the House floor, now under Republican majority in the House and Republican majority in the Senate, and then send it to the president for his sign-off. So that way we can have Republican priorities, Republican spending levels, Republican policy going on for the first year of the Trump administration. And I think that's a very, very critical thing. As I said on Maria, the country gave us a very clear mandate to reduce government spending and to make government more efficient, and that's what we're going to do.
Yeah, and I think that one first point that you made was really important, and this hasn't gotten any coverage at all, is that the House actually did pass the appropriations bills the way they were supposed to in this past budget year. So I know almost only counts in horseshoes, you know what I mean? It doesn't really count, but
yeah.
But we made more progress towards regular order this year than we have in about 40 years.
I would agree with you on that. And I was very, very pleased to be part of that progress, because that's what I told the 9th District when I ran for election, is that this is the way that Congress needs to operate. We need to pass our 12 appropriation bills individually and make sure that's what funds our government, not this omnibus stuff that we continually see that is just typical Washington swamp tactics.
So you guys are getting back into session January 3rd. If you get a speaker elected, you'll be certifying the election on the 6th. So how does that landscape look? Because, it seems to me that we can't have any delays. We cannot have any delays because President Trump needs every one of those first 100 days to be able to get his agenda done.
Well, I'll agree with you that it is very different from 2023. We have January 6th where we have to certify the electors for the presidential election, and we're very well aware of that. But this is the thing, Martha. Whether Speaker Johnson is the speaker or not, I don't know. But we must have a speaker that is willing and able to lead us to accomplish the America First, the President Trump's agenda. That's the number one most important thing right there. Because if we end up not having a speaker that can lead us in that way and to do that, then what we have done is we will have failed. And that's not acceptable. We will not fail. We will ensure that this Trump agenda, that this really, it's not just a Trump agenda, it's an American people agenda, because they put him in office with overwhelming support with the popular vote in all the swing states, as I mentioned earlier, because they want a more efficient government, and that is what we are going to do. But we have to have the right speaker to do it. We're working through that right now. You might see a little bit of drama on the 3rd, but I don't think you'll see it go beyond the 4th.
So will you vote for Mike Johnson if he's the candidate?
Well, he is the candidate right now, I'll tell you, and I have not made that decision yet. I am not totally convinced that Mike Johnson is the one who will actually be able to accomplish that agenda that is so critical and so important to accomplish. So I'm not there yet. My powder's still dry, Martha.
Okay. I have a question for you. Hey, this is Joni. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine, Joni.
Here's my question. It doesn't sound like you're thrilled with Mike Johnson, but my question is, isn't it going to be chaotic if we don't go with Mike Johnson? And what are the repercussions of that? And the other thing is, he's not the first guy who's tried to be speaker. I mean, it's been a soap opera. What are your thoughts?
No, I disagree with you on a soap opera.
Okay.
This is the way it is supposed to operate. All right. We are supposed to vote, and we are supposed to put the right person in place that will accomplish the job.
Right.
That's what I'm focused on right there. When you saw what happened, this past or earlier this month with the continuing resolution, and you saw more Democrats vote for it than Republicans vote for it, that's not good leadership right there. Okay? I mean, that's a problem. We want to ensure that all the Republicans vote for it, and we need to get to a point where all of the Republicans who want to control spending, who want to ensure that we have an efficient government, we're the ones who literally are leading that and want to make sure that's what happens for the American people. The Democrats, they had no desire for that whatsoever. Is all like this last continuing resolution, they had $110 billion of debt and of spending immediately added to our national debt. That's not controlling spending. That's not Republican ideals. That's Democrat stuff, and that's not what we want. That's not what the American people told us they wanted.
Well, I think one of the challenges that a lot of people, I think one of the challenges that anybody's going to have with this small majority is that if you get one or two people, and you've heard what people call some of these folks, that they just say no to everything and they don't really want to compromise and they don't really want to put anything out there. I'm not saying I'm one of those people. I'm just saying you've heard it, I've heard it, right? I mean, that's what they're out there saying. What is a level of compromise you would accept? Because with a one vote majority, and what do we have, like 3 or 4 people that are out? I mean, we would have had, I think, a 4 vote, right, majority. I mean, what's a level of compromise you would accept?
Well, we're actually at 220 to 215 right now. Okay, so really we have a. Oh,
okay. So that's how many will show up on January 3rd. That's how many will show up on January 3rd. 220. You think?
Yeah. 220
okay.
Republicans should show up on January the 3rd. So, there is that 5-vote spread, all right? But, hey, we have to stick together. And, yes, it's a slightly smaller, so 1 or 2 vote smaller majority that we have this year than we did last year. But we've got the Senate, we've got the presidency.
Well, and look, I'm not trying to be difficult, because I want regular order on the budget. That's my number one goal. Sure. I want that. Okay. But at the same time, I also don't want President Trump to lose one single day on his ability to get his agenda done, because he is the guy that's going to be able to push it through. He is the guy that's going to be able to keep people together in a better way. No offense to you guys. Okay. But he is the one that's going to be the leader. And I want him to have every day that he can have.
I do too. Absolutely, yeah. I do. He comes in on January the 20th, all right? And, we certify him on January the 6th. So we'll get it done.
The goal is to get some things passed so that they're ready for him to sign on the 20th, right?
That's correct. Yeah. And one of those things is budget reconciliation, which does not require Democrat, it bypasses the 60-vote threshold in the Senate.
That's right. You can do it with 51.
Only a majority of Republicans, which we have. We can do it with all Republican votes, 100%. We have to have a leader that is willing to make that help us make that happen.
Absolutely. Andrew Clyde, I want to get you in here for an extended interview soon in our new studio. We look forward to doing that. And have a very happy New Year, because I know you've got a lot of work to do right after that.
Thank you. I certainly do. In fact, on New Year's Day, I'm leaving for D.C. just to make sure I'm there early.
Good for you. Good for you. Don't get stuck, right? Anyway, Andrew Clyde, thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's where North Georgia comes to talk. It's the Martha Zoller Show on AM 550 and FM 102.9 WDUN.
It is the Martha Zoller Show. Joni Alpert is here with me this morning, and my new favorite person is Scott Jennings, but he's actually my second favorite person, because my favorite person is Brian Robinson, who's joining me right now, who is the best analyst on TV. Brian, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you, Martha?
Yeah, I tell you, I'm doing fantastic. I feel those green shoots of optimism. And I got to tell you, I am, one, impressed with how President Trump has handled this transition. Two, this statement that he issued on Jimmy Carter last night was just perfect. And
very nice.
It was very nice, and it was classy. Is this a new Donald Trump?
We can all hope. I agree. The statement was tonally perfect and struck the right chord. I think it would serve him well to act in that sort of presidential way. I think Americans are hopeful for that, and I think that's what that green shoots is. They're hopeful that we're going to enter.
He can be Tony Soprano behind the scenes when he's doing deals. I got no problem with that. But I think what he needs to be forward. I loved the line in that statement about acknowledging the small club that he's in. I'm hoping, because being a former president or a president is a very special place to be. And you ought to have each other helping each other out rather than half of them not liking you and the other half liking you.
Yeah, that's right. And just this weekend, I saw a replay of George H.W. Bush's letter to Bill Clinton, which was waiting for him in the Oval Office when Clinton took the oath and then came back to the White House. And it said, your victories are America's victories, and America is my country. And I think that's how we need to move forward on both sides of the aisle. I would love to see President Trump adopt that kind of attitude, that victories for him are America's victories, and it's ones that we can all share. It doesn't have to be a winner and a loser on the partisan divide. And look, I hear you about you're not so sure about the green shoots. I try to always be optimistic about America's future. That's been hard to do in recent years, not because the economy isn't great or we have rising homelessness, then a surge of illegal immigration, all of these things that, and potential wars around the world, all these things to make us full of angst. I am an eternal optimist in America. My concern is each other. How much hatred we have for each other. I think that's our biggest obstacle to us all getting to where we want to be.
So this year has been, by anybody's, 20 years of political news in 1 year. I mean, the first half of the year was full of all kinds of things, where it related to cases and lawfare and all the things that were going on with Trump, all the way up to basically an assassination attempt. And then from that point, for the rest of the year, we had Biden get out, Kamala get in, another assassination attempt. I mean, all the other things that happened. So it's hard. There's a lot of high points and low points to pick from this year. But what do you think are the biggest three things from this year?
Oh, the biggest three things?
Because there isn't only one. That's why.
That's right. Well, obviously Election Day's got to be the biggest, right? Because it was, while it was not a massive margin, it was a big victory for Republicans on the national and on the state level for us in Georgia to be able to maintain the House majority, even if by the thinnest of margins, to be able to regain the Senate majority. Those were as monumental victories as the Trump win in many ways, as far as making the Trump agenda possible over the next 2 years. It's still going to be hard to get some of the tougher things through with margins so small, but it wouldn't have happened at all if the Democrats had taken control of the House or maintained control of the Senate. On the local level, I think this is one of the most extraordinary things, is the resilience of the Republican majority. Democrats really thought they had an opportunity to pick off some of those state legislative seats just south of you there in Gwinnett County being an epicenter of those opportunities. And the Republicans held strong. And one thing that's very important for the future is that it held strong partly because Republicans were able to attract non-white voters into the fold. That's the only way you can win in Gwinnett County these days. And so Republicans are on a good track there. Obviously, the first assassination attempt's got to be on that list of three. I mean,
yes.
I mean, we almost have forgotten about it. I mean, how extraordinary that we're so used to one shocking thing after another that we moved past that so quickly, and it sort of, I don't think people were thinking about that assassination attempt when they went in to vote in November, even though it had just been a few months before, something that normally would have really shaken us up in some way. Let's not forget that was before Biden even got out. It was that long ago.
That's right.
And then another one here on the local level that was important to me, Martha, is we made our first step in Georgia toward greater parent choice in education by creating this Promise scholarships. We're behind other states surrounding us on this issue who have much more robust programs for parents to choose the best place to put their kids. Our program is still not robust, but it was what was politically possible in 2024. And I think if it succeeds, if we see a lot of demand, I think that's going to change the politics of this issue, and legislators are going to want to make sure parents have even more options.
Brian, hi, this is Joni Alpert. I just want to tell you that it's a pleasure having you on. But I have a question for you. Well, a couple of things. Did you say that the presidential assassination attempt, the first one, did or did not weigh heavily when you went in to vote?
I don't think it weighed heavily at all. I think it was important in the moment it happened, as far as bringing people who were iffy about Trump to him by creating a sense of sympathy toward him. Yes. And a sense that the world's gone crazy.
I think it did create some sympathy, but for me, it was almost like divine intervention, and I just thought it was a miracle. But my second question to you, my second point to you is, right now, I still see a lot of toxicity towards Trump. I am so excited about Trump presidency. I think he's going to do a phenomenal job. I am counting down the days till he takes office. But I turn on the television or I will talk to people and they still have this poisoned tongue about Trump. And I don't know what to say about that.
One thing I've noticed or read about in recent days is that since the election, viewership of MSNBC, CNN, two places we think of as go-tos for liberal Americans, for Democrats, for gathering their news, the viewership dropped off a cliff. And, I think to some degree people are just trying to, get the mouthwash after a really tough 2024 year, to get a fresh start and detach from politics a little bit. I hear you about the toxicity. The toxicity has been overlaid our politics for years now. I personally have experienced a bit of a break from it. Maybe I have detached. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe I have just consumed less political media because after 2024 it was sort of, overkill. But I do think that there is a sense amongst the mainstream media, at least the smarter ones of them, that they went too far and that they created a backlash. And I think that, what you're discussing there is part of that backlash. I mean, conservatives have just tuned them out completely. They have no idea what's in mainstream media. And I think a lot in the middle were like, we can't trust anything that they say about Trump because it's all through this bizarre negative framing.
He kind of set the table, Scott Jennings set the table for, the bills, saying they're going to pass some bills between the 3rd and the 20th. Well, they got to have a speaker to be able to do that. I talked to Andrew Clyde at the beginning of the program, and he's undecided about Mike Johnson. My view is Mike Johnson is the only choice, and that they need to get off their laurels and they need to vote for Mike Johnson so they can get to work on the 3rd of January.
Yeah. The greatest obstacle to Republican success in 2025 and 2026 is Republicans. I mean, we've got the majority. We have been told by the voters they want us to govern. And that means there's going to be some compromise. You're not going to get to vote on every piece of legislation that is a pure reflection of your every thought. There's going to be some things where you have to swallow hard. That is part of governing, even when Republicans control every branch that gets a vote or a say in what gets signed into law. So we've got to give a little bit if we want the Republicans to maintain control. We've got to show Americans that we can govern. And going back to what we said in the last segment, this isn't just about partisan gain. It's not just about Republicans having a good electoral chance in 2026. That's way too far to be thinking about. It's about our country. We are $34 trillion in debt. We have got to have serious leaders. I have been so happy to hear some of this Doge Commission folks speaking up about the true problems that we face. No one wants to hear Elon Musk say that it's going to involve pain, but he's telling us the truth. We've got to be adults and listen, and we've got to study the issues ourselves. If you go and do any look of our nation's fiscal course, you can't conclude anything other than change will be hard. But if we care about our country's future, if we care about our children, we're going to make some big changes. And look, it's not going to be like, oh, we're going to cut the number of hours of the national parks. We've got to do something about entitlement spending. And, you know, one thing that Trump's been really consistent about is not spending money on needless, endless wars. I think that's an important mindset. We still need peace through strength. We still need to spend money there to deter our enemies. But at the end of the day, we got to make some serious choices about when Americans can retire and then begin drawing checks from the government. Because we can't have people for 30 years getting checks.
Well, and you talk about endless wars. And you know, the debacle that was Afghanistan, you know that the president was told, if you keep 2,500 people in Afghanistan, we can probably maintain control. You think about what that said to the world when that happened and what has happened since then. What they've seen is a weak America. And this is what we get when we have a weak America, is that we get all kinds of things popping up around the world. And I agree with you 100%. This is about America. Sometimes you're going to have to make a compromise, you know, because you just have to. I mean, you worked for Nathan Deal, one of the best governors this state has ever seen. Nathan Deal was a guy that got most of what he wanted legislatively. Okay, he got most of what he wanted, but he didn't get everything that he wanted. He had to compromise. And you know what? You're looking back on it 8 years later, or however many years later it's been, is because they all seem like long years these days. But you look back on it, he accomplished a lot. And that's what we want.
Yeah. I think Governor Deal had a model that would be good for President Trump to follow. There were a few things that he wanted to see done that were his priorities, and he advocated for those. He put forward a vision and an explanation for why we needed certain legislative changes, and then let the legislature have a say in what it wanted to do without a lot of interference from him. You know, I think President Trump, we know what his vision is. Whatever people attack him on, no one can say he lacks substance. When he talks to us about real issues. You can agree or disagree with him on tariffs and trade, but he's got a view on an issue there. You can agree or disagree with him on funding Ukraine, but he's discussing an issue there, right? And I think he can put forward some values, some frameworks for what he wants to see done over these next 4 years, and then let Mike Johnson and let Senator Thune and other leaders in the House and Senate get some victories of their own. I think that'll be a great way to build teamwork and that sense of compromise. Let everybody get a win. You know, with folks like your Congressman Clyde, let that wing get a win with the understanding that they're not going to get everything that they want on everything. You know, for Andrew Clyde's sector within the House, I would say this. Yes, you are right that the budget process is broken. We all agree that we shouldn't have these continuing resolutions. It is a ridiculous way for the world's greatest democracy to operate. It's bizarre. They're right about that. But the way you fix it is by being honest brokers within the budget process and being willing to vote for a bill, a budget, where you don't agree with everything.
Well, and I think, too, the one thing that they didn't do that they should have is that they didn't tout the fact that they actually did pass all the appropriations bills this year. There was progress made towards regular order. We didn't get all the way there, okay? But we have made more progress this year than we have in like 40 years, all right, as far as getting something out there. So there is a more positive way to present this, and I think that that's what we need to work on. And I love what you said about, about American, this is American goals that we ought to have. And that's what really Trump has tapped into. And I think that's why he was able to flip as many people as he did. And I think that it's very encouraging to me that he is acting in the way he is, as well as how people are acting around him. I think I'm encouraged. I'm very encouraged. So, Brian Robinson, I appreciate you being with us today. It has been fantastic working with you. Brian and I also alternate out on the Georgia Gang, and so we're never there together, but we are always talking to each other, aren't we?
That's right. And that's right. I just greatly appreciate the viewpoint that you bring on state and federal issues. You're such an important voice here. And I just want you to know I appreciate you, and thank you for having me on, and Happy New Year to you and all of your listeners.
To hear the full versions of last week's Martha Zoller shows, go to the podcast page at accesswdun.com, and you can follow me on social media at Martha Zoller.